Today, we are going to talk about variables in JavaScript. We'll explain what variables are, how to declare them, and the different types of variables you can use in JavaScript. First, let's understand what a variable is. A variable is like a container that stores data. You can think of it as a labeled box where you can put something, and later, you can open the box to see what's inside or change its contents. In JavaScript, we use variables to store values like numbers or text so that we can use them later in our code. Now, let's talk about how to declare a variable. In JavaScript, there are three ways to declare a variable. You can use var, let, or const. Let's start with var, the keyword. Var is used to declare a variable. Here, we are declaring a variable called name and assigning it the value Alice. So, whenever we refer to name, it will hold the string Alice. Now, let's talk about let. In modern JavaScript, we usually use let to declare variables. In this case, we are declaring a variable called age and assigning it the value 25. The difference between var and let is that let has block scope, which means it only exists inside the block of code where it was declared. We'll come back to this later. Finally, let's discuss const. The keyword. Const is used to declare a variable that cannot be changed. Here, we are declaring a variable called pi and assigning it the value 3.14. Since we used const, the value of pi cannot be changed later in the program. If you try to change a const variable, JavaScript will throw an error. Now, let's talk about scope. In JavaScript, scope refers to the area in your program where a variable is accessible. We can think of it like this. First, we have a global area where any variable declared is available to all parts of your program. Then, we have more restricted areas, or local areas, where variables exist only inside specific blocks of code, like inside a function or an if statement. There are three main types of scope in JavaScript: global scope, function scope, and block scope. Let's break these down with examples. First, let's talk about global scope. When a variable is declared outside of any function or block, it is said to have global scope. This means it can be accessed from anywhere in your program. Here, we declare global var outside of the function. It can be accessed both inside the function when we call show global var and directly outside the function. This is because global var exists in the global scope. Now, using global variables might seem convenient, but it's generally not a good practice. Why? Because global variables can be changed from anywhere in your program, which can lead to unexpected behavior or bugs, especially in larger programs. Next, let's talk about function scope. When a variable is declared inside a function using var, it is said to have function scope. This means that the variable exists only inside that function and cannot be accessed from outside. Here, the variable message is declared inside the function showMessage. When we call showMessage, the message is logged to the console. However, if we try to access message outside the function, it will throw an error, because message only exists inside the function scope. In other words, message is function scoped, meaning it belongs only to the function. Now, let's talk about block scope. In modern JavaScript, variables declared with let or const have block scope. A block is any code wrapped in curly braces like inside an if statement or a for loop. Variables declared with let or const only exist inside the block where they are defined. Here, we declare block var inside the if block. When we try to log block var inside the block, it works. But when we try to access block var outside the block, it throws an error because block var only exists inside the block where it was declared. This is what we mean by block scope. The variable is limited to the block of code where it is defined. Now, let's compare function scope and block scope. When you declare a variable with var, it has function scope, even if it's inside a block. That means it is still accessible throughout the function, not just inside the block. Here, the variable inside var is declared inside the if block, but since var is function scoped, it is still accessible outside the block, but within the function. Now, compare this behavior with let or const. Here, we use let to declare the variable inside. Since let has block scope, it is not accessible outside the block, so trying to log it will throw an error. This difference is important when choosing between var, let, and const. In modern JavaScript, it's recommended to use let or const because they provide more predictable behavior with block scope. Let's also talk about nested scopes. In JavaScript, you can have nested scopes, a scope inside another scope. Variables declared in an outer scope are accessible inside the inner scope, but variables declared in the inner scope are not accessible outside. Here, outer var is declared in the global scope, so it's accessible both outside and inside outer function. However, inner var, which is declared inside the function, is not accessible outside the function. This is an example of nested scopes. Inner scopes can access variables from outer scopes, but not the other way around. Finally, let's summarize what we've learned. In JavaScript, you can declare variables using var, let, or const. Let and const are block scoped, while var is function scoped or globally scoped. Let allows you to reassign values, but const does not. Global scope means a variable is accessible from anywhere in the program. Function scope means a variable is only accessible inside the function where it's declared. Block scope applies to variables declared with let or const, making them accessible only inside the block where they are defined. Nested scopes allow inner scopes to access variables from outer scopes, but not the other way around. Thank you for listening. If you found this explanation helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more. See you next time.